This episode of Fermented Adventure the Podcast features Philip Search and Don Benedetto of Canary Cocktails and Spirits. They make superior cocktails that are ready to drink. They craft drinks so you don't have to. They start with quality spirits and real ingredients. You are going to love these ready-to-drink cocktails. Do reach out to Don and Philip and let them know what you thought about the podcast. Cheers! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. He's Don Benedetto. He's Philip Search. I'm Rich Shane. Dawn Ranieri's here, and this is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, man.
You nailed the name, too.
Nailed the name. I was practicing. Well, this is exciting because we get to talk cocktails and spirits today. And it's in the afternoon on Wednesday, and we're going to taste some things and some expressions that you guys make. What I'm curious about, what I want to know is, how did Canary Cocktails and Spirits get started?
Well, I guess that'd be me. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting and fun sort of history. Been around the beverage industry for a long time, going back a very long time. And, over the last 20, 25 years, done everything from, heavily involved in various aspects of the coffee industry to various things with distilling, managing a lot of bars and restaurants, setting up a lot of bar programs, kind of all across the country. And that sort of leads into, COVID and all of those things that happened and sort of the impact that had on the industry as a whole. So a lot of what we do kind of comes out of what started to happen as places shut down. When it comes to our canned, ready-to-drink cocktails, our stuff's a little bit unique because it really comes out of our experience in the food and beverage industry, along with manufacturing. It's very different than most of the canned beverages that are out there where, there's an idea of a cocktail, let's say, and that recipe is primarily driven by a food scientist who has a ton of knowledge about building that drink and putting it in a can and doing it in the most cost-effective way possible for a large company that wants to have, a whiskey sour in a can. Our stuff typically starts more from the perspective of those years of tasting beverages, tasting spirits, building programs for bars, for cocktails, for consumers. So it really starts with that idea of like a bartender making you something that's really, really, really good. And that's, that kind of is what sets it apart. But to go back to kind of how we started, during COVID, there were a couple of different aspects of things. One, obviously in Philadelphia, all these restaurants and bars were shut down. And at best, what they could do is some takeout stuff. And the takeout format for most of that was absolutely horrible.
Yeah, they weren't ready. Yeah. They didn't know some of the rules.
Yeah.
Shelf life, all kinds of different things that you help navigate.
And a plastic cup with ice is not the best to-go format for a cocktail.
With some foil over top.
Right. Like, and let's say even if it was going in bottles, there's like shelf life problems, there's all of those sorts of things. On top of that, at that time, I was doing a lot of work with various liquor companies, with their reps, helping them with events and tastings, educational stuff for bartenders and things. I would do recipes, batch cocktails, etc. for them. And a local area rep all of a sudden needed to do everything not in person. And begged me to can some drinks that she could then send out to, bars and their staff to do online, video trainings, where they would have those cocktails already and could be sampling them during a Zoom call. For several years, people had asked me to can cocktails for things like that. I've always said no because I knew what a giant pain in the butt it really is and how much work it has to go in to make that thing both a quality item and something safe. But at that time, with all these places being closed, I'm looking at my friends' bars and their whole life investment into something, and I'm like, we could really help with this problem that's there. Not even thinking that it would have longevity that it did, so I started very small operation of canning and co-branding a lot of bar stuff for their takeout. And we actually had a mobile setup where we could go on site to their place under their liquor license, use their booze. We'd build the cordials and things and set up and basically co-pack and co-brand those places beverages so they could sell them out a to-go window. And, there was a lot of success with that. Don and I met a little later when we were both involved in a big bar project.
I'm actually an attorney. I have no idea about alcohol at all. other than from the consumption end, but I do a lot of bar and restaurant work. So we met then, through some of that. But one thing I realized is kind of as we came out of COVID, it's like, well, there's a way to make money here because the bar's making all the money because it's their booze. So if we got the limited distillery license where we would make the finished product then, taking his thing he learned from COVID, how to make, once you try these, you'll realize it's a better drink than 90% of that you're going to get at a bar. So taking Phil's idea and his ability to put a perfect cocktail in a can, and then we're able to sell the fully finished product. As soon as I tried it, he's like, oh, I got this thing. And I went and tried. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Because normally you try these things and you pour it out behind you. Right? It's not that. So as soon as we saw it, we got to get some way to license this where we can make the whole turnkey finished product and release it retail, wholesale to the masses. And you're here.
Yeah. And here we are. And what we found is our conversations, there's so much that has come out of COVID that has found solutions for things.
Sure.
That actually not only has found solutions, but has made and elevated things to be better. And it really sounds like that's the basis. Yeah. Besides helping your friends and your colleagues and the people you know stay in business, but you've elevated that, right, and it's made it better.
Because you would look at a drink in a can before and be like, well, why would I have it? Right? But as it came out of COVID, especially in Pennsylvania, a lot of the quality bartenders left because they couldn't work for so long, or they got out of the profession, right? So they either moved to Florida or the South somewhere if they were single and able, or they went and sold insurance. So you're really left with a lot of inexperienced people, or places just don't have the manpower to make you what you used to get, which you liked. And this guy figured out how to make it perfect in the can. So now if your bar doesn't have the staff, or if you're home or whatever, there it is.
Now we're in this space and you've really built it out. Talk about the process. You mentioned getting the license to do this. Talk about the process that you have gone through to get there. Not only that, obtaining this space in Wayne, Pennsylvania, and all that you do with the canning and just what you figured out to get to where you are today.
I would say there's a couple things. I mean, it's been a lot of sort of coming up with solutions and bootstrapping things. We're not a giant company. We have a couple of employees, but it's a lot of us. Don a lawyer all day, and then
I put labels on cans.
Yeah, we come in and
they're usually label, straight. You'll see.
Come in and label. There's a lot of that, but I think some things were very fortunate. Like when you talk about the space, it lined up through a mutual friend of ours, and it just was kind of a perfect fit.
I live around here, and at the time they were doing everything in the city. And the city's kind of gotten more and more untenable in terms of doing business in. And I mean, simply put, when you came, we can pull a truck up to the gate, load it up, get drinks out the door, and deliver pretty much anywhere from here. We're right by the highways. But this was, if you could believe it, this was just a full warehouse of stuff, I think, in August. And then it was perfect because it had a ton of power, it had a ton of every utility we could need. It just needed to be cleaned out and turned into a canning line. So we really went from kind of working in, you mentioned you've seen smaller spaces, a very small space in the city, like a commissary type of space where before we got the license, but what we did is got this space while we were applying for the licensing. And I mean, we've only had the license a few weeks now. So you've gotten us we had our first tasting I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. So
yeah,
here
we're
we are,
very new.
But Phil kept actually, as to how we met, I had to come clean as a lawyer, kind of a bar restaurant mess up. And that's where I met Phil, but he literally held on to the quality staff from that place. And that's who helped him do it when they were canning COVID. So we've kept those people online.
I don't think they were canning COVID, were they, Don?
Well, that's another product line that I'm going to talk to you about, but canning during COVID.
Okay, because I think there's some investigations that would like to be done now. So
no. All good. But that's literally the staff we carried through. And that's how we had the staff set to go. We had the expertise. We have Phil, who's, a chef. We have another chef. So we have all the pieces to do it. So I kind of hand them more, dealing with finding spaces and dealing with getting licenses. And this guy knows how to make the finished product. So here we are.
Philip, I'm curious about this background and how you got into the beverage industry to start with, because I think that's helped to create the springboard to where you are today.
Yeah, so, it all starts somewhere, right?
Right.
A lot of where this started was, I think for a variety of people, I was going to school and needed a part-time job while I was going to college, and, convinced my way into a coffee shop. There was also another coffee shop on campus where I started, work as a barista. And, 8 years of studying various things later, realized I actually really enjoyed the variety of beverage work that I was doing. Through that, could kind of skip over a lot of things. But
you're going to yada, yada, yada the whole process.
No, but I had some really unique...
Was a barista, yada, yada, yada. Here we are today.
Yeah. But I had some really unique experiences. So I was able to work, for example, in through some of the coffee stuff that led me into... I did some work in a sensory lab, and, with full, sensory deprivation tasting room where, a little door slides open and you sit in the dark and you completely blind try things. And working with the lab staff, who are some amazing people, learned a lot more of the science of taste. So that it's one thing, a really skilled bartender, a really skilled barista can often talk to you about flavor similes, right? Like, you try this bourbon and it has this caramel note, it has this vanilla note, right? And they make those flavor similes. Working in that lab taught me a lot about things like the organic acids and being able to taste and name them. This is what creates this flavor. This reaction does this thing. This is what this flaw is. And all along I kind of filled in my, do coffee things in the day. Can easily bar back and bartend at night, and, built that up. And then that sort of took more of a front role when I took a little bit of a step back from some of the coffee side. Although we do some stuff with coffee here that we can talk about in a minute. But, because that was kind of the coffee side for me was a pretty consuming thing. When I say I did stuff in coffee, not little things. Every aspect of the coffee industry sort of...
So you're bringing in beans, you're roasting beans, you're grinding beans, you're doing different flavor profiles and things like that with beans.
Yeah, did a lot of training of baristas all the way to... Did a lot of work with... working directly with farmers in terms of going to their farms, spending time with them, teaching them certain aspects that I could help with, along with an agronomist that then helps them market their products better. But kind of in any aspect from the farm to the end consumer, there were different phases of stuff that I was doing in coffee. At the same time, once again, working in the bar industry. And that led to, a little bit of work with the rum distillery, further, honing in skills as far as tasting. I was lucky enough to be sort of one of the test people for the Cicerone project with beer and going through a lot of those programs. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest, so like as the craft beer
Explains
scene
a lot, right?
was booming over there and the coffee scene was booming, that led to a lot of other stuff. And all of those experiences kind of built layers into what we could do, and did a lot of also helping with opening restaurants and bar programs. So, kind of understanding like, oh, hey, what do they need? And that's all of those pieces build into kind of the products that we're doing now, because it's an understanding of what you might want as a consumer. And it's also an understanding on our wholesale side of like what a bar's specific needs might be, whether it's pre-COVID or after COVID, how they truly can run efficiently and well, versus how often they end up being pushed to running either through kind of the negative parts of the industry or through, lack of experience, stuff like that. There's I'm sure there's a thing that I'm missing in that whole long.
Well, I think part of it is for you. You got that whole witness protection thing, so you don't want to give us too many details about where you worked and what you did and all those things, but that's okay. When we were back at your R&D department, at your overflow alcohol shelf, right, you talked about the fact that you co-pack, or you're a co-packer, and you also have some distilled spirits that you're working with through other distilleries, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
I don't see a still in this facility.
There's not.
So what you're doing is, and my mind's is, all right, you got this beautiful open space. It's really, I can imagine what it looked like when you said it was full, but this is clean and pristine to what you have here. Mm-hmm. What's the process if somebody as either a distillery or a cidery or whoever you're packing for, whoever you're doing the ready to drink cocktails, what are the steps to get from I have an idea to now I can put my my juice and my ideas in a can so Don can label them and go from there.
Yeah. So it depends on the type of client, but it's relatively simple. We've tried to eliminate a lot of the difficulty. So spend a lot of time researching what exactly we can put in the can with our specific can liner and how we can craft recipes. We also have sort of a secret process that we do where the flavoring part of what goes in there, we build everything from scratch and it's real stuff. It's not, we're not throwing malic acid and citric acid and potassium and et cetera, to create a pineapple flavor or an orange flavor. We're using bitter orange peel, actual citrus juice, actual oranges, those things. So it's like crafting a real base product for those things, but also knowing then what we have to do in terms of pasteurization and talk about it being clean. We have a clean space where we're making those things in a way that everything can be stabilized and put in a can. So for most of our clients, it depends on what the client is. So let's say we just did some cans for Widow Jane. They were having a group of bartenders going up to their facility, and one of the reps called me and he's like, "Hey, I would love to have a couple of cases of of a coffee beverage." He was specifically talking about we do an espresso martini that's done with bourbon. He's like, "I would love to have those for this group that we're taking on a tour at the Widow Jane facility." And we're super nimble, so for that we're like, okay, here's the price, here's the, he didn't need to give us recipes. Here's the recipe, I need X amount of your bourbon, and that's pretty much how that goes. For some of our other clients, let's say it's a restaurant, we can sit down with them and go, okay, what do you want on your menu? Can I see the specs for what those cocktails are? Can I try them and get something approximate for what those tastes are? And then we're usually able to craft that into a very quality version of their menu. And we have some smart things like Don mentioned, keeping staff from restaurants and stuff like that. So we have guys that are experienced in that. We have a graphics artist that we have on staff that is able to then take that restaurant's branding, turn it into a beautiful hand-on label, And, we sort of have like the whole package. So like, for example, you can see some labels over here. Those are for the Landing Kitchen, which is Fia Berkshire and Nick Elmy's spot, just right over here. So we've been doing, custom drinks for them. Like for variety, they have a little coffee shop with a liquor license downstairs in this beautiful outdoor space, but they don't really have room for a bar. So it was we give them samples. The process is we give them samples. They say, oh, I really like this cocktail. We work out a label, and, a few weeks later, we're able to just produce that.
I think you pointed out one thing that you don't see a still, because I think early on we realized there was no reason for us to distill our own product. We're making mixed drinks, and we're able to source product that I think when we put it into the mixed drink, it's better than anything we're going to make here anyway. We talk about this all the time. I'm sure you've run into a lot of things and you try it, and we ran into one bar and we had to try their drinks, and what they were pouring out of the well was awful, right? You wouldn't clean your brakes with it. And we were able to fix that problem pretty easily, and then realizing there was no cost efficiency in distilling our own product or going through that, process, because we don't gain anything out of it. But if you were, for example, a distiller, you're a local Pennsylvania distiller, and you make vodka, and you come to us and say, hey, we want to, 4 vodka drinks, because we're in the distilling business. All day we'll make you 4 drinks, put our branding, our co-branding on the can with yours, and say made with, Rich's vodka. That's something we do regularly. It's a part of our business. If you think of our business, there's really kind of 3 silos to it, right? There's the straight retail to the folks, right? There's co-packing for people like that have a spirit that they want a drink built around. They could be a distiller, they could be, whoever, that they want a specific product, like as he was mentioning. And then there's just the kind of the wholesale end of it where we're putting a product together for a specific bar or a restaurant. And that's why you won't ever see a still here.
Yeah, there's a cost efficiency part. I also want to just chime in on the fact that, I think the industry as a whole has a lot of really quality people making amazing stuff. And then also a flip side to that of a lot of people are not necessarily required 100% label honesty for where stuff is coming. I would say that most consumers would be very, very surprised that even amongst the biggest companies, a large amount of booze is sourced, diluted, and bottled. This is not a new thing. This goes back to the founding.
Absolutely.
The founding of the colonies, right? We've always sort of farmer has grain, and he's gonna put about 10 bushels of grain in a wagon from central PA per wagon load, and then have to take that wagon. He has 100 bushels, and he has to take that wagon down to the port, and he's going to sell that grain. But 10 bushels of that grain come down to about 1 gallon of distilled high-proof alcohol, which sells for about the same amount of money. So he can take all 100 bushels, distill it down, put it in one wagon, and it goes to the, at that time to the British, who then, it's part of the trade in spirits that involves multiple other places and blending and all of those things. So we're kind of carrying on that legacy part. But, in the modern era, to really, really distill well, and been there and understand how that works, it's not just about making a little bit of something, because, we want to be able to give everyone from the consumer to our wholesale clients a superior quality product at a price that isn't, prohibitive. And that's the other piece of that. So part of that involves us sourcing really good things. It doesn't mean we don't make things with spirit, because there definitely we'll try some stuff. We make aperitivos and amaros and various other things. So if it's something that we can't easily source, we have our base alcohols that we're sourcing in bulk, and some of it I feel like is a little innovative, and some of it is pretty standard. A lot of people are doing that.
I think the shelves are just full of product, right? I'm not going to make a better vodka Grey Goose.
I don't know. I think we tasted a better vodka than Grey Goose, and we've had better vodka than Grey Goose before. We just, with Springhouse Spirits, their vodka was unlike anything Dawn and I have had ever.
Yeah. And there's that one. And then there's 30 others out there.
Well, I think...
I haven't tried them yet.
For that one, there's 30 that aren't going to even be able to be used in a mixed drink.
Right. And you don't want to put that... You're not going to put your name on that. No. And... That's exactly where the craft and what you're bringing forward to the consumer.
Yeah. There's no. I wouldn't take something that tastes as bad as some of the wells out there and put it in our drink. It would make the drink horrible.
I think I gave you a lineup of some of our bulk source stuff, and we can try through it. And I think you'll be really surprised. I mean, that's where the tasting of things for years and the sourcing of things for years comes in. Because we're able to go, ooh, this is amazing, and this is perfect for what we're doing with it, whether it starts at our vodka, and then other things, like I said, we might get in a bulk grain neutral spirit and modify that to become something else, whether that's our version of Campari that's over there. We don't call it Campari, obviously it's a branded thing, but we make something similar. It's a bitter aperitivo, we make another one, we call it aperitivo number 1. It's kind of a gin based spirit that goes in our plums cup, which is it augments to bourbon, and it has a bunch of fun things in it. So there's those sorts of like crafting of things where we couldn't go source that thing, or it's we need this to be a certain way for the can with certain things in it. Can't have dyes, can't have etc. And maybe that doesn't exist on the market, so we need to craft that thing. But I've always been impressed, though. The real work of getting a consumer a top quality thing in a bottle is people sitting there and tasting things. Whether it's bourbon, where you're blending stuff that's like, for both cost reasons but for quality reasons, you're blending 4-year-old, 7-year-old, 12-year-old bourbons from different spots in the rickhouse to create that flavor that people know is that bourbon, or there's entire brands that are just sourced things that people do a really good job of sourcing all of that sort of stuff. And like I said, I think there's a lot of history to that, and we just kind of built on that because our craft piece is what you see as the finished product in the can, and for the consumer, that's solving a lot of the things, because even if you have, the reason that most of my home bar is in here is because even as like a 25 plus year bartender, I don't necessarily want to go home, make fresh juice, get out all the tools, make a cordial or a syrup or a thing, and then shake a cocktail and whatever. And God forbid I'm having a party, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm now stuck for the next 3 hours making cocktails for my guests. So a lot of like this is like thinking, oh hey, this solves that problem. Boom, here you go. And so we put that work in, and it's a fun sort of thing, because what we've managed to do is get that same quality of thing in a stable can, and so now we're taking out all of that work, but in a 30-gallon batch. So it's a there's no stopping. It's as easy as cracking a seltzer. Which I think has also helped open the market for what we're doing. Is like people have gotten used to drinking different things other than beer out of a can, whereas before they kind of would turn their nose up to it. Sure. I think that plus COVID has sort of loosened up.
It's changed the consumer perspective. It really has, and created a new consumer, a new space for things to come in. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to try the whole litany of things that you have available. I can't wait. You've set this up perfectly. So we're going to take a break and come back. Pardon the interruption. If you like what you hear, if you love what you're hearing, please share the podcast. Please take a screenshot of the podcast, post it on your social media, tag us, just to let everybody else know about Fermented Adventure, the podcast. We'd be grateful for your help to grow our podcast. We're back, and I'm freaking giddy about the fact that there is so much here to try. And you pointed out this wall of cans that through COVID you canned over 100 different kinds of recipes for all kinds of businesses and things like that. And to me, this experience you've had has brought us here today. And I'm excited. I can't wait to try all these things. And I think where we're going to start, Philip, is you want to start with some of the things you're using, the base spirits, the Amaros and things that you're making, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to give you an idea of like what, because you did mention canning all of those things, and those were under individual places' licenses. So it would be, I would offer suggestions to them of what spirits we should source for a particular recipe. But let me tell you, the good and the bad, I've tried all of the things because it's well over 300 different cocktails that we were canning during that time for various bars and restaurants, and got to try some pretty phenomenal spirits that landed in a can and some pretty awful things. So I'll give you a taste of like what we think are kind of perfect things for consumers. So this is our base vodka. It's 100% corn, 40% alcohol, standard 80 proof. Works really well to create sort of a background of alcohol for delicious, crushable drinks.
Are you allowed to share where you're sourcing this from, or is that a proprietary secret?
Double secret.
Okay, double secret.
Double secret.
I get on this almost like a burnt caramel note to it. See, I'm one of those, and Dawn and I share this opinion, that yes, back in the 90s and early 2000s, vodka should be odorless, tasteless, nothing to it. And I think the word craft has come in, and I think what's helping to elevate things that you're doing is there are things of flavor that do come out of vodka.
Oh, 100%.
And maybe you want to temper it, but you get personality. And if you're starting with a great spirit, as you said, you've tried all of this, the good, the bad, and everything. If you start with a great spirit, it makes that cocktail and elevates it to such a higher place.
Yeah, and we could talk for a long time about where that like 100% neutral, no flavor, no aroma idea comes from. That's really from large companies trying to market a product. There is, with vodka, certainly a long tradition of a couple of different vodkas being quality craft spirits that goes way back. I mean, I have a ton of respect for, and this is 100% corn vodka. But I have a ton of respect for rye vodkas, especially like certain Polish rye vodkas, and the sort of artisanal reflection of that can come out. In this I wanted a little bit of that sweetness.
The sweetness is there.
Enough neutrality that it sort of can accent other things. And that's where we ended up. And it needed to be clean. The one thing about doing our process is if the ingredients aren't quality going in, it really affects the whole thing because we're not hiding or masking any flavors. So if I'm using citrus juice that isn't correct, all the way down to, and that's why like we build the bitters, we build all of those pieces because we want every aspect, starting with the spirit and going from there, to be of quality so that it reflects sort of what comes out in the can.
I like this. We're going to do vodka, and then we're going to open that up. This is great.
It's going to be a vodka cocktail.
Now, Phil's got a plan for you.
I love it. I love Phil's plan. So now what is this? Now, the cocktails that are here, these are your cocktails.
Yes. These are our stock, the 6 that we launched with.
Okay. Where can people find these cocktails now, and how do they get their hands on them?
They can contact us or order through the website, and they can pick up here if we deliver to a certain radius, and we can ship to Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Right. That's dangerously fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. I love the essence of berry. You lead with blackberry, but the first thing I got more of was honey and sweetness. Mm-hmm. And then there's this almost like this citrus peel that finishes in the end with this essence of the berry on there.
Absolutely. So that's our blackberry honey smash. The flavors that you're describing are exactly kind of where it's supposed to be. We didn't want berry to be the primary note for the sense that that tends to be, that's all you would taste. But you definitely get that blackberry. The citrus peel you're tasting is partially from the bitters that we make for that.
Okay.
There's a heavy component of bitter orange peel that goes into there. It's blackberries, honey, lemon, angelica, bitter orange peel. Those are the main flavoring things, and then it just builds around that vodka that you just
Very
tasted.
dangerous vacation drink.
What's the ABV on this?
That one's 10%.
10%. All right, so this is a couple of these sitting around a fire. You've got some sort of wedding event, baby's first birthday. I'm selling that. I'm pouring that. That sounds good.
It's definitely, and then people think, oh, it's an 8-ounce can, it's 10%. That's not that bad. 3 or 4 in, and you're like, whew.
Well, I stopped at a couple. You went 3 or 4.
3 is nap time.
Now, what do these retail for? So that if I buy a 4-pack, right? Mm-hmm. I'm coming to you. I see on the website. I'm picking up the whole line. What are we retailing these for?
So these are a 4-pack is $24.99. And then we give discounts for volume.
$24.99 is super cheap because I know if I go to a bar or restaurant, I'm probably paying somewhere between $12 and $15 a pour for that cocktail, depending on where you are. Mm-hmm. Plus, you have to tip on top of that. Now, that's a very inexpensive 4-pack. I think that's so reasonable.
That's about a drink and a third.
Yeah.
Too. You have about a little bit left to pour
per can.
Yeah, per can.
That's nice. I think the price point is great, but already you've introduced so much flavor, so much personality. I can take that as you illustrated, Philip, and I can open up one of those, pour it. Nobody sees me do it. Put a nice little garnish on there. Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, you're the best bartender ever.
The first time he gave them to me, I was going on vacation, and I took those, and I drank 1 or 2, and then the kids were like, where'd Dad go? So I'd just be sitting by the beach with 2 or 3 of those, and it'd be over. I mean, they're so smooth and easy to drink.
So
I love the lingering bitterness of that. But you still get the sweetness of the honey. It really punches through. That's delicious.
Awesome. So this is you're tasting our Blanco Agave Spirit. It is not a tequila because it does not have a DSP from Mexico, and I would put this though against any of those. I mean, that's one thing where sourcing tequilas. Almost every tequila that you try comes from one of 3 distilleries, and I have a massive respect for all the work that goes into all of those things. For us, for the purpose of cocktails, we wanted to have a sustainability aspect to that, and that came a lot about how we've sort of selected this for our agave-based cocktails. So,
see, now I love the way you do this with the base spirit. And then we see where all those other flavors are marrying into that. Mm-hmm. This is juicy. It's peppery. It's citrusy. What's the proof come in on that?
So what you tried should be, it's 50. That's at 50%.
Okay.
So, it's 100 proof. A lot of what you're going to be tasting is right around there because that's also where I kind of have it for my baseline for me tasting the things before I start crafting the recipe for the actual drink.
So you make sure that spirit still has some backbone to it, mm-hmm. and you're not really killing it, especially if you're bringing in a lot of natural flavors mm-hmm. and a lot of personality to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don, what's your feedback or what's your experience now that you've gotten involved here and you're a partner and you get to see all this stuff that's happening?
No, I mean, the main thing has been, Phil's expertise and the reception that people have given the product. I mean, the first tasting we did a few weeks ago, I'd say that an easy 3/4 of the people that tried it bought it. And some of the things you said, I'm always watching price point, reception, are people looking at the price, right? Because you got it immediately. You go into a bar, you're paying $12 for a well drink these days, and it's nowhere near what you just drank, right? So, I mean, those are the things that I'm worried about. But, I mean, to me, seeing the reception when we poured those samples and like, oh, I'll take that 4-pack, I'll take that 4. I mean, people were walking away from the tasting with like cases, which was great. Great feedback on it, great feedback about the labeling. I mean, there's really nothing about the product I would change, even if I could. But Phil has brought to you some way to change it, as you can see.
So I see 2 things. I see this beautiful pink cocktail that you brought, and I see this almost like this straw, like creaming, like it's almost like a cream ale in a way. But these are the same cocktail with a couple of different variants.
There's one just small tweak we made in it, and curious to see your feedback. But that just with the amount of one ingredient in there. But this is our stock.
And what do you call this?
This is our stock hibiscus margarita.
This is more bitter. I also seem to get more of the agave spirit that comes out in the end on this one. I almost want to go to that sensory deprivation room you talked about.
Yeah, it's really hard to make those small, subtle adjustments because the difference is literally between
besides the color, this tastes a little more juicy, and this is a little more bitter, and I get more of the agave that comes out on the end of this. You tell me.
You have better taste.
I don't know.
The difference is not in the tequila and not in anything else in the recipe, just in the amount of hibiscus that's added between the two.
Okay.
That's literally how one small change affects everything. But I'm just super curious to see what you...
You're the first that have tried the new batch. So congratulations.
They're both really good. This is more sweet.
I like them both. I think I gravitate more towards the first iteration, but that's just me.
Yeah, and it's not...
Our taste buds don't like bitter, so that's just us.
I mean, I think hibiscus, you're always going to get like that tart.
Yeah, it has a tart sort of interesting...
They're both awesome.
Yeah.
If you're making me choose my new child, or do I get the keys to the Ferrari, or do I get the keys to what are you giving me, the Porsche or the Ferrari? They're both great.
And the fun thing is this is a very widely consumed cocktail, right? It's a margarita. Everyone has tried a margarita at least once. Every bar, pretty much, no matter what kind of bar it is, makes a margarita. It's also the thing that I cringe at ordering as a craft bartender out at most bars. And that's what I love about this is you can get a quality margarita without it, without a problem. And the bartender doesn't have to sit there and juice limes for 14 hours.
I just wish there was a way to put a little salt on that mouth opening so I could...
You certainly could.
That could be a packaging opportunity where you put a little bit of package of salt.
Side,
so I open it, I taste it, I put a little salt in there, and I can keep going through there.
Absolutely.
All right.
No, that definitely could
That's
be...
yours. You guys do it. Run with it. Have fun with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll need you to sign some papers.
I'm sure, yeah. Now, is this how you do most of your tastings? Or is this an inception of how you'd like to do some of your tastings moving
This
forward?
would be nice, right? It's
I
usually
mean,
a little more chaotic.
do you allow the people to say, all right, this is the base of what you're doing, and then taste the cocktails?
Yeah, and it depends on whether that's a consumer or whether that's a wholesale client or whether that's someone coming to us with a recipe. It depends on which way that is. Also know that we're very new to the distilling license and all the things, so we haven't done... We don't have a set format yet for a lot of that stuff. We're figuring it out as we go, which is kind of the fun of the process.
I love it. This is your gin?
This is a gin. So this is, we call it an American dry gin. There's about 13 different botanicals in there. And it's a really fascinating, fun take on a gin, I think.
It's citrus forward, almost citrus bitter forward.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I got a lot of pepper on the nose. I got a lot of... There's a lot of herbs. There's an herbaceous nose to this.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a lot of botanical pieces that, come forward. And there definitely also is some citrus in there, but it's try to balance it. Obviously, it starts on a base of juniper, and then we kind of build around that in a variety of different ways.
The juniper to me almost comes out minty, not as piney, but more minty or more in the way of thyme or rosemary or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and that's one. So now,
the rosemary.
I mean, well, and this is probably why.
And just for I did not know that. I didn't see the label.
Yeah. So why it does that is because of this that you're about to try. So that gin is specifically sourced for this gin and tonic.
Holy cow.
So we kind of, now you can kind of see where we're playing off of the flavors the spirit flavors really impact the cocktail. So our seasonal gin and tonic for fall winter is a rosemary gin and tonic. We wanted some like warmer notes, but still have a refreshing drink. And that's what makes this work.
That does.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. So you can kind of see like
You don't have to be a gin drinker
approaching the spirit as one of the pieces of the whole. Sometimes, we change like how that spirit would be. That gin might drastically change come spring when we do a different type of gin and tonic.
That's something to look forward to as a consumer, because now if I become a fan of what you're doing, now I can look forward to saying, okay, I have this, I better stock up on it. It may not be here, but I know the next iteration to come down, the spring or summer gin and tonic, that becomes a collectible item. That becomes a brand that I'm going to follow now and look forward to.
Yeah, I think it's a fun sort of step from there.
I think people.
And
that
is
feel
this
like gin
10% ABV as well, or is that a little bit lower?
That one's 10. The margarita's higher. They range. I mean, they go up above 16. We don't have any of these for you to try right now, but we've also canned Manhattans and Old Fashions.
Well, we'll be sleeping in the back waiting for you to can those and have them ready.
So the highest that we've made safe for canning is right around 30%, which is pretty boozy. But for our stock things, we're not trying to kill you with an 8-ounce can.
All right, so you do 8-ounce cans. Is there a plan to do bottles? Is there a plan to do larger cans? Like you said, this is new. We've done 12-ounce cans also. That works very well for some of the lower ABV, very crushable cocktails for summertime. So I'm sure at some point there'll be some things in our lineup like that. Bottles we'll have to see, possibly for the local market. Shipping glass is difficult and expensive. Okay.
Both for us receiving the packaging in bulk, and that's the can format is just so great for a variety of reasons. But one of them is we are able to take the drinks and market them to a wider audience. At a more effective price point when it comes to us saving on some of the shipping and other aspects of that.
What I find so fascinating, and I was thinking about this earlier as you were talking about, helping these other bars and businesses stay in business. And this is all a COVID inception, right? I certainly wonder what would have happened if we weren't forced to be shut down and change our way of life had COVID not happened.
Yeah.
But you're on that next step. You're saying, all right, we've gotten to this point where we've helped businesses stay afloat. We've introduced the consumer and changed the consumer's habits, because we know that there were distilleries that were doing a little bit of their ready-to-drink cocktails. Some of them were on the beginning side of things before they even knew why they were doing it. They just wanted to have cocktails walk out the door.
Yeah.
And this is that next, okay, we've gotten here, now let's put an amazing high-quality product in a can.
Yeah.
Because this is what the consumer wants.
I think that's 100%.
So if somebody comes to you with basically you could work with a bar or a business or an existing distillery. If they come to you with an idea, look, now what I see is they don't have to worry about buying a canning line. They know that there's going to be a business, a company out there like yours that is going to have the personality and the quality of what they're looking to express.
100%. And that we've gone through a lot of the mistakes of figuring out what we can and can't do, so that our development process is a little different. There's always been co-packers that'll do that, but the other thing about us is we're very much a small craft producer of those things, so we're not going to require you to do a 700-gallon minimum or a 300-gallon minimum. We're much more nimble in that respect, and our recipe portfolio is so large. When you bring me, I want to go this route, we probably have something that's already been tested for the can, so there's not going to be that upfront cost of like developing that product over and over and over. We've we've kind of gotten through those things.
You're really helping to shorten the runway for people to get some ideas into cans. And I look at it this way. Again, I see the consumer now educated. Like the same thing with Zoom, right? I mean, who would have thought that all these business meetings would have happened on Zoom and talking to family members on Zoom, and now it's just something that's more part of our way of life? Well, ready-to-drink cocktails are more part of our way of life. As you amplify the quality of what it is, you make that runway smaller for these businesses to say, you know, if you're a local restaurant here, as you've talked about with some of these cocktails, I can now have and create a new revenue source or an existing revenue source that I can make bigger by having my customer walk out, or my bartender, or even my server upsell and say, hey, you love that cocktail. Would you like to take it home with you?
Yeah. Well, there's also an aspect that I would love Don to explain, because he's seen it over and over. We were at a local place recently and having a beer after work, discussing some business things, and we watched the bartender get a cocktail order in.
Just grind to a halt. Right, busy bar, empty pints on the bar, and somebody came in and ordered a Cosmo, and that was it. 10 minutes, no drinks poured, money lost. Right? I mean, so
over one Cosmo,
one drink, and she was being meticulous about it. You know, she was filled the glass with ice, let it sit, looked in the book again. Mixed the drink. I mean, it wasn't 10 minutes. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it was minutes.
It was enough to say, and if you're a bartender, when you're in the zone, when you're in the flow, it's like yesterday was Harvey Wallbanger Day. Who orders a Harvey Wallbanger? And if somebody says at the bar, I'd like to have a Harvey Wallbanger, I'm like, do we even have Galliano? Is that dusty bottle in the back that we keep moving, wondering if anybody's ever going to use it, right?
Yeah. How spoiled is it? How bad is my orange juice?
But that happens
et cetera.
2 or 3 times in a half hour. And I mean, so just him and I, empty pints on the bar.
I wonder, and I hear what you're saying, Don, but I wonder if the consumer at the bar, what their reflection is going to be if they see the bartender crack open a can and
it depends
pour.
on the bar.
Yeah, and so we're at a place that's more of a pub, right? That we're talking about. I would have a very different perception as a consumer if I went into a very high-end cocktail bar where I'm paying more than $20 per cocktail, right? And I see the bartender not make the thing. I think that would be different than if I go to my local pub and Don gets a pint of Guinness and I want to have a margarita. Well, I wouldn't normally order that margarita, but if I knew this was there, I probably would.
We're not trying to replace the high-end cocktail bar.
No, to the point, I think that's exactly the way you framed it's perfectly. Look, if I walked into a brewery, because now breweries are limited depending on their license, and Don, you could speak more to that. But if now if somebody says I don't want beer, but now you provide them with an option for their customers, I've got 6 cans here, maybe 8 by the time the podcast app airs. But I got all these choices to say, look, if you have somebody that wants a margarita, if you have somebody that wants to drink this blackberry honey, crack open the can. You can even put the can next to the glass that you serve it in.
That's what we see, because that's why we.
I'd be
spend
open
so
to that
much
as a consumer.
Doing the art beautifully, putting the ingredients, putting the ABV, putting everything that you want to know, and like fun little things that we hide in the labels, and we do that for places as well. We'll brand their information.
I see it. Buy Canary Cocktails. Buy Canary Cocktails. You work it into the.
We put
and you
like
see,
branding.
You have a third more, right? You have that pour over top.
Right. Your little sidecar. Boom.
we went into a space, and the owner was talking to me, and I said, Phil, we got to help them. They have a 30 to 40 minute bar tab wait. Busy. They're just losing money. Right? I mean, it's a younger crowd place. They're not going to care at all. They'll probably love the can look, right? College age, grad school age, and they're waiting 30 minutes for a drink. I mean, if you and I were waiting for 30 minutes for a drink, there'd be no waiting, right? Because you'd be gone, right? I mean, you're just losing money as an owner. And it fixes it. We give you a 6-drink menu. And the other thing, they're giving 15 options of drinks. Somebody's going to order one of all 15. Give you a 6-drink menu, these 6 drinks, decide on your retail price, and they're going to love it because you're going to serve it in a nice glass with the sidecar look. and it works.
The
Fixes
other
the problem.
The other thing is that I have gone into a bunch of the places and the bar manager usually brings up like, oh, well, how are people? You're asking me to reconceptualize bartending, and consumers are going to feel a certain way. And this is where I think my 25 years of being in front of people, I usually say, hey, hold on. No, I am giving you the opportunity to be the best kind of bartender because you can increase your interaction with the guest, your explanation of the drink, and your actual hospitality. One part. But the other aspect of it is you don't have to worry about, as a bar manager in the back of your head, a lot of the other issues that happen with making a lot of cocktails.
Here's what I love about this.
Yeah.
Look, you're not worried about waste.
Nope.
You're not worried about overpouring.
Nope.
You're not worried about spoilage.
And they're the same every time.
Yeah. I mean, you could certainly have a bartender with a heavy hand. Mm-hmm. Or you could have somebody that has a light hand, and now people are returning stuff and saying, this doesn't have enough alcohol. You've created a consistency opportunity. You're solving problems, and I agree with you.
Yeah, without lowering the quality of it.
Yeah, if you charge me $20 and I see the bartender take out a glass and pour a can in the glass, I'm going to be like, not for me. But for Dawn and I, like I said, certain atmosphere, certain place, this is awesome. But I love the idea, too, that now that bartender can say, hey, if you like that cocktail, take it home with you. We have a 4-pack. You'd love to take that home with you. Yeah. You upsell, now you're making more money.
Yeah.
And branding, because they're going to want to come back to that place again, and they may say, hey, can I just come back because I love the cocktail? I'll just take the 4 cans with me, stop on the way home from work, and I can have a nice evening,
Yeah, I think there's all those. And then there's the aspect, too, that the number one selling item at a lot of the places that we've talked to that aren't, obviously these aren't high-end cocktail bars because they don't even usually offer this, but are seltzers. And I have a suspicion that the seltzer market got as crazy as it did because people could get a consistent, decent product that wasn't beer, and it wasn't... Because if you don't go to a cocktail bar and you don't go to a wine bar, those are the 2 places where you're going to get a specialized thing. But let's say outside of that, you're not at either of those 2 places, but you don't want to drink a beer, your options are...
water or beer.
And then I think seltzer jumped into that and sort of built on that. And now we're offering something else, possibly what you really wanted. Maybe not, but that's kind
I
of where
love the option this provides.
Yeah.
I think that there's such a fertile ground for you to explore with this. What is, you're remembering what you poured?
No, I was just seeing if it's open. So the char on this particular bourbon lends itself to a longer sort of rest period in the glass.
So I'm going to ask, the 3 clear spirits that you've poured, and now we're getting into brown spirits, are these all Pennsylvania or are they outside of Pennsylvania?
So outside of Pennsylvania as well. So
not specifically any one of those, just outside of Pennsylvania.
Outside. We do a lot of work.
49 states.
Yeah, we do one of the other 49 states. We do a lot of work to get sort of
technically we've blended it for you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
As a bourbon, this is delicious. Nice, buttery, nice, great caramel notes, spicy to it. I love it. Yeah. I just walk home with a bottle of this if I knew what it was.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, this is...
Compare that to what you think's in the well and what they're making drinks out of from what you tried.
You make an awesome point there because, again, you're going with this lower product. I'm not going to say... It's just less expensive because they've got to make money, but you're not giving them the quality that's there. You're not giving them the value.
We're working really hard to take that. That in particular, right? I would put against.
Is this a weeded?
It is not a weeded.
Really?
It's high rye.
Because it's got some character of a weeded bourbon to it.
It does. That's because we blend 2 bourbons in there.
I'm just exploring with you, Phil.
There's a 12-year-old and a 6-month bourbon that are blended together to create exactly what we think should be in that bottle. And I would put it against most of the high-end things that are on the shelf behind the bar where you're going to be paying above $20 for a cocktail with or for a pour.
All right, now I want to know what cocktail is this making?
So that's we're going to go to the Plums Cup.
I'm like, The anticipation's killing
But
me.
you got to try before it's in 2, but you got to try another spirit that isn't ever intended to be necessarily consumed on its own. But I just want you to see how we modify some other things.
That is so buttery.
Yeah.
I can't say that other than a butter washed whiskey, I don't know if we've had something out of the bottle that was that buttery. That is.
I mean,
so
it's a
nice.
pretty high proof.
I was gonna say it did seem like it is high proof.
That's all right.
It is high proof. Yeah, that's 56%. So we're 112.
All right.
So that's almost that would be a lot of barrel proof. Be close to that. This is another spirit. So that starts as a grain neutral spirit and gin, and becomes a cordial aperitivo sort of fun thing.
I got peach on the nose.
Yeah.
I got like
There's a
stone
lot
fruit
of-
on the. Oh, there's like.
There's some stone fruit.
I just want
definitely.
a bottle of this.
Yeah. So that has plum and a lot of different types of orange flavors. So you've got both Seville orange.
So are all these for sale now too?
Today at a high price for you.
Eventually, something like this might be
Thank
be
you, Bob
available.
Parker.
Right now we're
So
focusing on cans.
so again, I mean that's the fun part. I mean, we talked to Method Spirits, and we had a great conversation. They created their sweet vermouth because of a need for bartenders to have a high quality vermouth that's going to stand up to some of these new American craft cocktails
Yeah.
that are coming out. And to me, whatever that is that you're defining, whatever that's defined as, I would love to have a bottle of that on my bar.
That's a very
amazing.
classic. That's a very classic. I mean, this comes with a lot of history of when you're talking about that bourbon. That bourbon comes with a lot of distilling skill and a lot of aging skill.
But I'm just talking about the aperitif for
the aperitif. Yeah, the aperitivo is that's a
whatever
whole,
whatever you're calling this.
yeah. So that's our aperitivo number 1, and it's a really, like I said, that's a fun thing, and that comes from me creating flavors specifically for cocktails for years and years and years and years.
I have to ask, how did you come up with Canary Cocktails? How's the name coming? What is that? Don, you're laughing. So
I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest.
okay.
I mean, it's if you the pun should be somewhat obvious.
Can.
Yeah.
It's a cannery, man.
That's it.
Yeah.
But then you got what throws me off is the bird on the. It just
Well, and that's
Our somewhat aggravated millennial bird.
yeah. Don always jokes. Don always jokes that the bird isn't angry
He's
enough.
gassy.
angry
He's,
enough.
he's not angry. He's gassy.
Yeah,
That's all.
right? He's like millennial upset, like.
Don't down your logo.
No, it
When
works,
I was passing off branding and label inspiration ideas to the graphics artist, one of the things that I wanted was to recreate a sense of childhood fun. And I gave a lot of inspiration of Richard Scarry books. I don't know if you ever read those as a kid, but they're these highly illustrated books where the story is all through the book with these different types of inspiration. So a lot of brightly colored art, white background. You can kind of see then we've brought in our own artistic style to that. We do some other type font stuff, but when it comes to the bird, it's a little bit in between this Richard Scarry and Winnie the Pooh. And you'll see that reflected in some of the illustrations, that you have a very stylized but still go together piece. So that's with the branding, that's what we wanted. We wanted to invoke a little bit of fun, but also still be something that you could remember. And I feel like with all of those pieces, we've done a pretty good job of capturing that on the branding. And we, like I said, we have fun with the labels, and we want them to stand out and be as playful as our drinks are.
I think what that does for me is, here's one of the questions that goes through my mind. Mm-hmm. And in a way, you've already answered that by the quality and just this over-the-top amazingness of flavor and personality in each can. We're at a point where, how do you differentiate yourself in a way to the market of ready-to-drink cocktails that are already out there and finding their ways to the shelves?
Yeah.
And I think it's already answered for me, for both of you, for Don and Philip, that you're differentiating yourself. You've already created an idea of how you want your brand to look, how you want that consumer to understand that now they're going to get something that they're not going to get just from that local distillery or local business.
Yeah, and it's the idea of it's a handcrafted product. So it doesn't matter whether it's the label that starts with somebody literally drawing each label's specific thing to match what's in that can, or the fact that like Don's in here hand rolling labels onto cans for hours and hours at the end of his day. To us building everything from the bitters to whatever, it all goes through, to be that. And I think that's our differentiation.
I think with the labels, two sides, right? The product side, but the labeling, she does a great job, and they're all kind of special in their own way. But the other aspect of it is so you come to me tomorrow for your bar or your restaurant. Unlike everybody else on a dime, I can create a personalized, perfect label. Or it's your wedding, or it's your whatever, that are going to have our look and feel and co-branded with our emblem. But we have a flexibility out there in terms of differentiating the product that I don't think any other product has. We're not huge, right? So like
not yet.
A huge, Fortune 500 company selling cans in a state store, that can looks the same every single time, and it's that. We're not that, but we're even the smaller gang now because we do every single thing in-house here. We make those labels, we design them.
To that point, Don, I get a sense that you're like a star. Think about a caterer that'll do those small events. Mm-hmm. And as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, do you have the ability to still do those small events down the road where you're only doing 30-gallon batches? And I think for what you said, Philip, look, you've already had these tried and true and tested recipes. So pulling something off a line and saying, all right, we already have this Plums cup. We'll just put your artwork on it. If you want to do a wedding or you want to do this for your restaurant or bar, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of products out there that are made by big companies that you can still get that customized level, right? So it'll always be a part of the business where we're doing the small batch run for somebody and doing custom labeled. And yeah, that's kind of why we tried to launch a 6-can line that was like our main production line. Because at some point you're spot on. Like that business is probably or hopefully going to become a very big thing. But I think there's also just so much market out there. You look at what I remind my wife annually how much she spent on our wedding, right? That is a huge.
How long
business.
ago was that? You're reminding her how much
every
you spent
year for 15 years. I've reminded her what we spent on our wedding, but that is a huge business.
Okay,
billions, right?
Yeah.
It's a massive business, and it's untapped in this area, right? A customized drink that you put in the swag bag on the way out. So yeah.
As a gift for a wedding, if I got this, I felt like I didn't give the bride and groom enough of a gift.
Solid, right?
Man, they're going to hate us.
And then the other side, away from the cans, because she does such a great job, and we do it all in house. But our differentiation is this isn't a regular canned cocktail like you've been used to in the marketplace the last 10 years.
What is this you're pouring for us, Philip?
So you might just want to smell this and not drink it, since you told me you're both not super fond of bitter.
No, we are. But see, here's the thing. When it comes to hops, I think the hops in a beer, we love hops in mead and cider, but the bitterness of it, I think, in a cocktail or in something else, we gravitate towards that.
This is a bitter aperitivo, and by bitter I mean it's.
I don't think it's that bitter.
No, that's it.
It could be bitter more bitter.
It definitely scores up there. But
you know what? When you guys do the commercial that you're going to do when you get to that point, I see somewhere that angry bartender because you've replaced them. They're angry because somebody's coming in and they're going to say, "Hey, can I have a bitter Cosmo?" And they're ticked off because they just want to make their drinks, and now they just keep coming in and they're pouring your drink.
That's exactly what I originally thought, right? Every bartender's going to hate us. But then suddenly it's a busy bar and they don't have to make drinks and they're selling 30% more cocktails. They're not anymore, right? They're not millennial Canary angry. They're suddenly like,
hey, filter all your emails to Canary Cocktails to Don Benedetto.
Right. Good pronunciation.
Thank you.
But I think that was my first thought. Like there would be hesitancy in bars. But unless you're at that high-end cocktail bar where it's their craft, it's mainly an annoyance when they have to make a mixed drink at a busy bar. right? They don't want it like you. Like
if it's
Phil
not a
pointed out.
vodka soda or
Right.
whatever, like a two pour sort of situation.
Coke,
a lot of
vodka,
places just
cranberry.
aren't set up for it. Like if literally, if we still do a lot of events and things for and help out some other liquor companies, and like the setup that I bring for making drinks at a thing like that, it's quite extensive, and most bars don't have that,
Or the staff now, to be honest. Did we skip the Plums Cup?
No,
we totally did.
Don, I'm the one that's been drinking. You shouldn't be
I
missing
didn't
cocktails.
Well, I don't think we said the name, so I wanted to get it on the...
We actually did. I feel like it's that Progressive commercial where we're going to throw out the red flag. This is since I don't want to sound like a broken record, but these have all been amazing. I would be so happy if I had these for cocktails at a cocktail bar.
Yeah.
I really would. I would not, again, once as a consumer, I get past the idea. So I wonder, is this something you could, because I've seen other bars do this. Can you put this in a keg? Can you put this in some sort of a line?
We can. We're pausing on that for a little, but we have helped places kegging their cocktails. It's a very similar thing. The reason for the pause is all of the other things that are involved in that on the bar's end, like keeping the lines clean.
you have to rely on them to mix a certain level.
Yeah, possibilities of waste, like for the bar in terms of their cost, can be extensive. Like, someone asked me to help them with kegging, some cocktails for them, and just looking at the fact that they clean their lines once a week, great, but draining the lines, the very old lines they had from the basement, to go to the bar on the second floor, this is not beer, which maybe theoretically is a few cents an ounce. This is an actual cocktail with nice spirits in it. So the cost is a little higher for the bar, and that's where we tend to run into some issues. Whether or not we'll overcome all of those things, I think there's a possibility.
I think over time for you and what you're doing, people are going to find you.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to have this available to them. So they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And as long as you're willing to work with them, they'll everybody will figure it out.
I think that'll be a thing. But yeah, you're drinking that bitter Cosmo. So we make the bitter aperitivo.
Well, now I'm
that goes
just
in
drinking your bitter aperitivo because Dawn finished the Cosmo.
We can pour some more, but that's things that stand out from a traditional Cosmo with this. We had grapefruit to it, and our aperitivo really highlights a lot of those citrus flavors, and we wanted to make. There's a couple of these drinks that we wanted to have some fun with, right? So wanted to make the Cosmo that the non-Cosmo drinker drinks and goes, ooh, I like this. What? I like a Cosmo. But the Cosmo drinker drinks and goes, yeah, I like this. So its finish is a little different than a traditional Cosmo. What did you call it? The husband and wife
Cosmo.
Cosmo,
You can enjoy the Cosmo together instead of it's being
so there's a couple of drinks that are fun in that way. But we'll pause with the cans for a second because I want you to try two spirits that...
By the way, as I drink these, so we were at a wine distillery in Nashville, and they make Amaros, and they make really good digestives. And that's what I'm calling back to. These are things that I would walk in here and say, I want this number one.
Yeah.
I want I would buy bottles of that.
And that I think we'll definitely do
So
because
kudos to you. These are delicious.
Those are being scaled
these
up.
are and as a bar, I would want these behind the bar because now I have something that I know the quality and the flavor and some of the other just different cocktails I can make with that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So this is there's a can that we're going to make tomorrow, actually, that's for one of our clients that we sourced this for, but unfortunately I can't serve you that one today, but I want you to try the base spirit because I think it's really, really good. This is a 6-year rye.
I was gonna say,
and it is
nice and spicy.
It is an outstanding example of what made Maryland and Pennsylvania famous for ryes. It's to me it's a standout.
Distilled in Pennsylvania.
That one? No.
Really?
But distilled with an eye on what Pennsylvania did incredibly well.
It has characteristics of a Monongahela style rye.
Yes, and that's exactly what that was built around. And it's not the softer rye that you would expect from, let's say, a larger Midwestern, bulk spirits warehouse.
Starts with an M,
Yeah.
ends with a P.
Yeah, it is, and that I enjoy a lot of their products. To be honest with you, and their higher end stuff is very, very good. But that is not from
That's
there.
not it's not as bitey as what you're describing.
Yeah,
It really tails off. There's actually a nice creaminess to this.
Yeah,
12% of the mash bill's barley. It's 57% rye and the rest is corn. So,
All right.
Yeah.
If we can grab that bottle, and that's awesome.
I think it's
See,
really
this
good.
is the thing, and what we're talking about. When you start with these base spirits, that's going to be an amazing cocktail.
Yeah.
And I can't find this if I'm a bartender or I'm a spirit. If I need to bring my spirits in, if I need to start with that base, where am I going to find it? And can I actually charge $6-7 a pour for that at a bar? No way.
So, and that's, I think that this is where our whole sort of structure starts, is also we hope to eventually, for a few of our accounts, help them reclaim the well, and offer people amazing things. Because imagine, this is your well, that this is not what people serve in their well.
You can't afford to. I mean,
you should.
In a lot of ways, you can't afford to.
And we want to make that. We want to make that a thing.
We want to fix that.
We want to fix that problem very, very soon, and not have it be just something that the well is thought of as something cheap. Because that's the difference of when you go into a high-end cocktail bar. That's the other piece of that, right? Is a really good bar manager at a high-end cocktail bar knows how to source super quality spirits that are also a value that make those drinks.
To that point, though, to what you're saying, if I go into a high-end cocktail bar, I don't want low-end well.
Yeah, there is no low-end well, hopefully. There shouldn't
be.
That's what I'm saying. Right.
That's where I say, if at a high-end cocktail bar that shows up, I'm very happy.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, I guess I get the personality where I say, and somebody says, we're making this drink, and I say, what else can you make it with? Because I don't mind up.
Sure. 100%.
I don't mind up buying as a consumer if I know and I look at the back bar and I say, I like you to make it with that.
Yeah.
But if that's already in the well or a higher end,
and this is where you wouldn't have to do that.
No, I wouldn't have to.
And this is one that I'm pretty proud of our blending skills. So this comes in a long history of.
This is a rum.
This is a rum. And it's blended from a mix of 3 different rums, one from the U.S. and 2 not from the U.S. And it's just, to me, for what we end up doing with it and for cocktails, you can drink that straight and it's got character and it's unbelievable.
Juicy, fruity, funky, banana.
All the things.
It's all. See, if you put rum into what do they call that? Where it spins around. A centrifuge. I'm in a centrifuge.
Yeah, there you go.
If you put this in a centrifuge of all the characteristics that I want in a rum, that's what I get in this.
Yeah. And that's exactly so, coming to that and saying, hey, what do we want in this and what do we want in a cocktail rum that could really stand up with character to the cocktail but also accent and augment those flavors. And I think we nailed that spot on. That and a daiquiri is like the best thing in the world.
Just a little lime juice?
Yeah.
That's it. You're done. You don't even need the simple syrup. You don't need any sweetener. Just that's simple. That's easy.
We'll go back to the cocktails now.
I saw this right out of the corner of my eye, this Grandpa's, I'm going to say grandma because I don't know who that is, but he's got a little mustache, so I'm assuming it could be an Italian grandma. But hey, look, send your letters and comments to Dawn.
Oh wow, look at that.
Look at that.
I may not
look at the
share that
head
with
on
them.
that.
No,
So
don't
you get
even
that.
give that. Don't even give that one to him.
You get the typical espresso martini foam. This was,
This is a homage to your coffee days, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, it's called Grandpa's Espresso Martini because Grandpa's a little grumpy and he drinks bourbon.
Why is everybody so grumpy here? You guys don't seem grumpy.
You missed us earlier.
No, it's yes, it's a homage to the coffee thing. So starting with that, like literally, we source green coffee, roast it a particular way for being part of our spirits lineup, and so that has our cold brew espresso.
I know. I knew I wasn't getting that back.
And then
once I handed that off to you, I knew.
But just like the Cosmo, there was sort of a fun play when we were approaching that, which was this: we want a drink that the espresso martini drinker is going to drink and enjoy. Then I want to make an espresso martini as a challenge to the person who would never order an espresso martini. They're going to drink that and like it. And the classic one of that is people who drink just not even cocktails, but like bourbon, whiskey in general. We've tested this on a bunch of people and they're like, oh, I love this. I didn't know I like espresso martinis. And that was the duality of what that is. And we accent the flavors in the bourbon with some other unique characteristics. It's very different than the other espresso martini that we do. But that takes play from the last couple of years, the most popular summer drink in a coffee shop was an espresso and tonic. And we took some liberties from that as well. So that has our tonic in it as part of the build.
I get that tonic. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to, harness what I'm tasting, because this is unlike any martini. We've had a few espresso martinis. Yeah. And when you get that, you get coffee and vodka.
Yeah.
Or you get a neutral grain spirit and coffee.
Yeah.
And that's what you taste. This has so much different personality.
So we wanted to pull the flavors of the coffee and the flavors of the bourbon and still be an espresso martini. Like you have that base flavor, but I wanted to pull those flavors out, accentuate them in a different way. And the tonic sort of acts as a foil to those two to bring out all sorts of depths of flavor from each of them. So it's a really fun thing, and it doesn't taste like. The other thing is, it doesn't taste like one thing.
It doesn't.
That's
several things.
Yeah. So but it still works in harmony. It's still a cocktail. So that's kind of the fun. That's the fun lineup. That's what we strive to craft things that are that.
What's the plan? Where do you see? I always say this is our job interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So, I mean, it's really getting the product out to market as much as we can and as quick as we can. And right now, the quickest thing we've done, which is like the local tastings and the expositions that you're allowed to do under the licensing rubric, and selling it that way and online. I mean, the thing is once we kind of turn this up, I mean, right now, the way to ramp it up right now is getting bars and restaurants to adopt it, right? I mean, then you'll see the product by where you live, you'll see the product here and there, and then hopefully once it's in the state store, you're like, oh, I had that, and they were charging me X for it, and now I'm able to get it right in my local state store. So hopefully the product acceptance is there, like what you said, pointing out that, am I ready to drink a cocktail out of a can, which I think is really there. And I mean, we haven't even talked about like the applications of this outside of bar and restaurant and retail. I mean, just think of like what a miserable experience traveling now is and getting a drink, all those things.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get this on, one of the airlines want to stock this,
and you asking about 5 years, and that's what we're talking
hotel mini bars.
5 years from now, we want you as a consumer to have such a better drinking experience. I did sales in the whole Mid-Atlantic, right? So for beverage stuff, and I would go to places and help them and the whole integrated thing. But like a lot of that brought me onto Amtrak. That's what we want.
Right.
Because like here I am on Amtrak. Now I have my airplane mini bottle, Schweppes, whatever tonic that they got, my plastic cup with ice, and I'm trying to and a lime that looks like it was cut sometime last century, and I'm trying to build a gin and tonic. We want to smooth that over for you and be like, hey, this now the year-round Amtrak gin and tonic, and honestly have it be something that's so good that if I poured it in a highball, if I put that in a Collins glass with a fancy garnish and you went and you paid $28 for it, you'd be like, oh, this is amazing.
Here's what I know.
Bartender's so good.
You mentioned Amtrak, passenger. Mm-hmm. Now, I may want to ride Amtrak more, because I know what I can find on Amtrak that's going to be of a good quality. That's easy to find.
I'm just old enough to remember when traveling wasn't miserable, right? You could have a nice drink and maybe be peaceful. Like, try to bring that back to some level, right? I'm going to take the train to New York and I'm going to have a couple Canary Cocktails on the way.
So if somebody's in Idaho, Montana, Nevada, can they order your cocktails and will you ship to them?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
It's a hard no. Thank the state of Pennsylvania but there are states too. So liquor, every state. You got to fight the fight.
So what states can, besides Pennsylvania, just Pennsylvania?
Just Pennsylvania.
Just
Right
Pennsylvania
now.
for now, and then eventually we'll be as we jump through the hoops and find distributors for certain spots and other stuff like that. We're planning on gravitating, starting here in Wayne and moving out. I mean, obviously we already have accounts and stuff in Philadelphia and like this kind of region, but we would love to see, other states get affected. Now, the exception is, we talked about traveling things. Surprisingly, Amtrak and the airlines, we
Things
can't.
that the federal government runs, they can do whatever they want, of course.
Look, you're young. These are all those growing...
The company.
Right. You're still young. But these are all those processes of growing, right? And you'll figure it out. You've already figured it out with these cocktails. You really have.
Thank you.
These are exceptional. I'm grateful that we found this at such a young time. And I think, for Don and you, Philip, you guys are on to something. And this is awesome. And I really appreciate your time today, that you've been willing to share this. I feel like this is just ready to blow up. That when you find something that you say, wow, this is like, that singer that you hear singing from their basement. And like, how come nobody knows about you? Because you just started. This is great. Thank you so much today. We can't wait to find you on Amtrak or flying those friendly skies.
Well, you guys are right around the corner, right?
Yeah.
You can come pick up.
Come pick up anytime. This is great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.